Where is my timer? Because because I okay. Because I no, thank you so much. Uh, confirm, can you hear me? Good, yeah. So thank you so much for having me, CZI. I appreciate this opportunity to come and share our story as NMB, Z Holdings, and Xplug. So my name is Luckson Madziwa. Okay, all right. My name is Luckson Madziwa, and I'm the managing director for Xplug Solutions, which is a technology subsidiary company under NMBZ Holdings, where we also have NMB Bank Zimbabwe. I'm sure all of you will know NMB Bank Zimbabwe. We also have another subsidiary called NMB Properties. And my job today is just to share a story of how we have been able to uh, take technology, localize it for our unique challenges as Zimbabweans, as Africans. So I'll take you through how we have been able to transform NMB Bank up to the point that we then established Xplug, where we are now offering solutions not just in Zimbabwe, but in 7 other African countries. And the vision is to actually conquer Africa. So the vision is actually 54 and more, where we then want these solutions that we are developing from here, from Zimbabwe, to be running in all 54 African countries. And I think it's important that we share these stories at this particular point in time. Why? Because I'm sure you'd all agree with me to say for the longest time, Africa has been largely consuming technology solutions that are made elsewhere. I think for the longest time, if I'm to ask you, most of the enterprise systems or technology systems that you are running in your organizations, these are systems that you have either imported from Europe, China, India, and the likes. So for the longest time, Africa has just been consuming. I always say we have always been in this consumptive mode. You know, you can either operate in a consumptive mode or a productive mode. And there is an issue when you are operating in a consumptive mode. It means you are the one who is always paying. It means you are the one who is always begging, right? And you don't create jobs. You know, I know as leaders, we are concerned about creating jobs, jobs, jobs. But you don't create jobs when you're operating in a consumptive mode. So we need to get Africa from a point where we are just a destination for technology solutions to a point where we also become a creator of technology solutions. And this has been our vision from 2019, where we have then been able to rewrite that story. Myself, I've been a tech sovereignty advocate for the past 10 years or so. All my career, I've been developing local solutions. So most probably, if you interact with Telecel, if you interact with Econet, you're probably interacting with one of the solutions that I developed. So this is just to show you that it is possible. So there I just put in some stats just to show you how much spend is going towards technology. And this is money that we are sending out of Africa. You know, I always tell people to then say, do you know what it means every time we are paying for license fees, right? Every time we are paying an Indian, I don't have anything against Indians, right? It's just that we are getting a lot of solutions from them, right? But do you know what it means every time we are paying license fees to those companies? It means we are guaranteeing that their kids have school fees, right? Make sense? So we are creating jobs in India, not in Zimbabwe. No wonder why we have experienced a mass exodus of skills, especially around the tech area in Africa. Why? It's because they are running to where production is happening. Here you are just consuming, right? So I just put in some numbers there just to show you that it is now important for us to rewrite that story and make sure that we preserve or that foreign currency that we are spending on these tech solutions. It is also important for us to control innovation. Why? Because, I mean, it is not a secret that we are operating in a very disrupted environment, in an environment where technology is disrupting the way that we work, the way that we do business and all. So it is important that we also take control of the rate at which we innovate. I'm sure most of you, if you want to do innovations, because we are heavily reliant on these vendors, you then have to rely on their speed of execution, right? You don't have full control at the rate at which you can churn out innovations. And yet you are dealing with consumers and customers who are exposed globally, right? They are consuming other products from other markets where they are agile and all. So we need to make sure that as Africa, as leaders in this room, we take charge of our innovation story. I believe that innovation doesn't have to be imported. It's something that we have to create locally. Yes, it is okay to still import some aspects. I always say it's okay to import empowerment. It's okay to import information. But when it comes to the innovation itself, it's something that we should then be able to take full control of. Right? So now coming to the NMB story, just like any other, most of the organizations, I'm sure most of you can relate to these realities. So for NMB, we started this transformation journey in 2019. Back in 2019, that's when we decided to embark on what we called the digital transformation journey. But before that journey started, I think these were our realities. We call them the pre-transformation realities. I would say back then, before the transformation, we were running a heavy manual and paper-based bank. We always joked and said it's like we were a paper company with a banking license. I mean, if you came to NMB back then, you would see a lot of paper everywhere. People would literally be hiding, behind papers and all. So we're heavily reliant on paper processes. We had a lot of employee fatigue because most of our processes, right, were very inefficient. I mean, we had processes that would take 8 hours just for a resource to complete. I mean, looking at processes like your reconciliations, account opening and all. I'm sure for those of you who are NMB customers, those who opened accounts before 2019, opening a bank account was like writing a 3-hour math exam. You needed a PhD to be able to complete all that paperwork. So the whole enterprise was heavily run on paper. So as a result of that, we had limited visibility in terms of then tracking, right, our processes to then say, if you initiate a process, if you then want to find out where it is and all, and even just to see whether that process is efficient, because everything was paper-based, there was limited tracking. I remember we used to have an approval process. Probably most of you still have that, which was paper-based, right? Where someone had to move from paper, with paper, from one office to the other and the likes. And you can't even tell where your approval is, right? So there were a lot of inefficiencies around all our processes. We had high operational costs where most of our spending was around stationery, printing, and then archiving, right? So if you were to come to NMB back then, I mean, almost every branch had a huge room just for archiving all those papers, because we are a regulated entity. The regulator then mandates you to then retain information for a number of years. So imagine trying to retain information sitting on paper for 7 years, right? So which means we were spending a lot of money around printing, around archiving. You needed to secure archiving. It was also difficult even to then retrieve certain information that would have archived, right? We also had slow turnaround times. Processes took days, if not weeks, right, to complete. I remember when I joined NMB, it took almost 8 days to open my account. I was a staff member, so you could imagine. I had joined as a head of IT with full control of systems. Still, it took me 8 days to open an account, right? So you'd imagine how long it used to take customers. For some processes, it would get to even 14 days. Imagine 2 weeks just waiting for an account number, right? So these are the realities, right? These are our pre-transformation realities. And later on, I'll then show you how we're then able to turn around this. I mean, compliance and audit burden, audit times were always difficult because you are trying to deal with paper-based information. So retrieving that information, very difficult. Took time. So most of the time we were in breach. Human error and inconsistency, because again, processes were paper-based. You can imagine different handwriting, someone just trying to input certain data on those forms. So we had a lot of human error and inconsistencies, and it was also difficult to scale up our operations. So I've summarized, what I would call our transformation drivers, what then triggered us to transform back then. Like I said, just like most African institutions, we were also heavily reliant on these external solutions. I would say probably 99% of our systems we were getting from, confirm you can still hear me? 1, 2 testing, better, right? So just like most organizations, we're also heavily reliant on external vendors from Europe, China, India to provide systems for us, right? And our market. I mean, there were a lot of foreign currency constraints, and for you to then run these systems, in some cases, vendors would then give you, those license codes, where you apply the license code, the code will be valid for only 1 year, and then you are trying to source for foreign currency to pay for the license cost. If you fail to raise that foreign currency on time, sometimes service is disrupted, right? We also had a lot of out-of-context solutions, and would then spend a lot of time customizing these solutions. The reality about these solutions is they were never made with Africa in mind, right? Because these are solutions that were developed in India, in Europe. So when they were developing those solutions, they had Europe in mind. They had India in mind. They had China in mind. So in our case, when we then get those solutions, we then had to spend a lot of time just to customize these solutions. We used to joke and say, we do customizations up to the point that you may then even fail to recognize the original system, just trying to customize. If you look at most of the projects that we're running or that are running, I'm sure you can relate, right, to this. Most of the projects that we are running are probably customization projects, which means you are trying to force something that was never made for you to work for you. And if you look at most systems, I would call them white elephants, right? We're just utilizing probably 1% of the systems, right? Because these were systems that were not made for the challenges that we are trying to solve. We also had a slow time to market, like I said, because we were not in control of our innovation. So for every simple change on our systems, we had to send a change request out, right? And it was not for free. You had to pay, even just for changing a comma, right? It's a change request that you had to rely on someone. So you would then change. Our job was just to document what you need to be changed, and then you send to India, and then you would pray that someone would quickly understand your requirements and quickly implement whatever you want to implement. So innovation was difficult. It was not easy for us to roll out products and innovations. And that then caused numerous customer frictions. Even after spending so much time, so much money, right, and time customizing the solutions, right, we still had customer friction points because we are trying to force solutions that were never made with us in mind to work for us, right? Over-reliance on external vendors, like I said, for every small change, we had to rely on someone in India or out there to do those changes for us. Poor support services. Time differences. You have an operational issue, live issue, you are trying to get someone, right? and then probably they are sleeping. Yes, when they sell you these solutions, they tell you, no, we offer 24-hour services, right? But if you then look at the skills or the people that are manning these 24-hour desks, these are guys that are just there, just to give you initial response. But in terms of then solving the actual problems, they then have to rely on someone who has gone home to sleep. So it will take time, right, to resolve certain operational issues. Rigid change processes, we had to pay a lot of money for changes, even simple changes. Like I said, just changing commas, just making simple changes on our system. We had to pay a lot of money. And all these systems, they also came with punitive pricing models. I'm sure you can relate and say most of these systems, they then force you to upgrade, right? Spend money on upgrading them. And if you look at the upgrade, it's not really an upgrade, but it's a re-implementation in some way. And we are spending a lot of money. So we then also talk about punitive pricing models as one of the drivers. So what did we do to address that? So in 2019, we then made a strategic decision. This is the same time that I also joined the bank, and I was given a mandate to then help to transform the bank. So, just like any strategy, you need to be clear where you want to go. So the first thing that we did was to make sure that we articulated, right, what we needed to achieve. Yes, we came up with a strategy that we termed the digital transformation strategy, right? So for that strategy, we then sat down as management and set some goals, right? So one of the goals, that's vision setting there, that was the first step. And it is important to then say, I think the previous speakers were speaking to then say, before you adopt these systems, AI and all, be sure of what you then want to achieve. Do you have a vision for it, right? Don't just jump in just because everyone else is going for it, right? I'm sure everyone is talking about digital transformation, AI transformation, but do you have a vision for it? So for us, we had a clear vision. So one of the goals was for us to have end-to-end digital customer onboarding and transacting with no manual intervention. At the time, we had a lot of manual intervention, even on transactions. You wanted to do an RTGS, it needed a human being, right, to then make sure that that transaction goes. So there was a lot of manual intervention and all. So one of our goals was then to say, as we transform the bank, let's make sure that our onboarding process and transaction journey maps, we don't have any manual intervention, right? It has to be digital. And I will show how we are then faring against all those goals. The other goal was for us to grow the customer base 10 times using the same staff base, right? So we wanted to grow the business without necessarily increasing the number of our staff members. The other goal was to in-house. That's so dear to me because it speaks to tech sovereignty. In-house, all bank systems. Remember, one of our drivers was over-reliance on these external systems, where we're relying on external vendors to give us these systems. So we made a deliberate decision to then say we want to in-house all our bank systems, except certain core banking systems, which may then take time to develop, right? But again, later on, I'll speak to how then we're still pursuing that to make sure that we in-house all our systems. We develop them in-house, locally, using local talent. The other goal was to eliminate paper-based process, 100% elimination of paper-based process, right? So made sure that approvals and all had to be done, right, digitally. So we had to eliminate. Remember, we are coming from a situation where everything was paper-based. And the last goal was to commercialize the systems that we would have developed under goal number 3. We then wanted, one of the goals was then to commercialize those systems because we realized that we were not the only institution that was in that situation where we were facing those challenges that I articulated earlier on, right? So you can see that we had clear goals to then say, as we transform, what is it that we want to achieve? And you can tell, and just from the goals, that these are clearly measurable goals. Anyone can relate to them, even your stakeholders, right? Even staff members can relate to them. So number two, once we had our goal, what did we do? Because we were coming from a traditional bank with bureaucratic processes, paper-based processes, where approvals had to move from one office to another. You had to beg someone to attend to your approvals and the like. So we then made a deliberate and strategic decision to then say we also have to transform our staff members' mindsets, right? From a bureaucratic or traditional mindset to an agile and customer-centric mindset. So we had to do a lot of training on agile, right? Agility, because we're coming from frameworks that would then use, waterfall methods, where if you are to execute a project, you then need to make sure that you document everything, you're explicit in everything, you develop, you test. So it will take time with that bureaucratic process. So we had to move to an agile process where you deliver quickly, right? Deliver in iterations. And we just wanted to cultivate a culture of flexibility to then say, we need to be responsive. So we then conducted trainings across the enterprise, up to the guy who makes tea, right? We made sure that we trained everyone on agile, just to say what is agile and how will it help you. We also transformed our business model from what we call a siloed model, where you have departments. Back then, largely, the whole business was run in silos. You'd have probably retail banking there running with their own strategy. You have business banking running with their own strategy. IT is also doing their own thing. Finance is doing their own thing. So we then transformed, we made a deliberate decision to then transform our business model from a siloed model to what we call a composable business architecture. So composability is very important because it views everything in terms of modules, right? So no department owns people. No department owns a budget. No department owns, things like your cars and the likes. Every asset in the business is viewed as a module that can quickly be composed, right? Around a certain value stream. Once you are done, you decompose. That resource becomes available for the next opportunity. So it is just an architecture that promotes that to then say, instead of having things along functional lines, to then say, as IT, I have my own people. As business banking, I have my own people. As retail banking, I have my own people. We then say people don't belong to departments. People belong to the vision. In fact, before they belong to the vision, people belong to God. Right? So these people are then available, right, to be composed around value streams. Once we are done exploiting that value stream, we decompose. They become available for the next value stream. So this is a very, very powerful concept of composability. We are also applying the same even in terms of when we design systems to then say, you should then be able to compose the best of everything. At least you harvest the best of everything. You achieve what you want to achieve. If you are done, you decompose. We also transformed our business operations where we adopted what we call no ops, right? So the idea was to still have operations, but not in the traditional sense where you then have to have people, right, behind those operations, right? And I'll let you know how we are then able to do this. So we wanted end-to-end processing with minimal to no manual intervention in all our processes. And then the last thing that we also did, very critical, was to transform our ICT structure. So back then, our ICT was the structure was very traditional. I always say it was like a post office. There was no innovation that was happening there, right? They would receive requirements from the business units. They just look at the requirements and then maybe package it nicely and post it to an external vendor. So we had no innovation happening internally. So we then made a deliberate decision as part of this digital transformation strategy to transform our ICT, where we then started to introduce new roles. Because of some of our goals where we wanted to in-house, most of our systems, we then had to bring in new talent. So that's when we actually came up with a new structure. We introduced roles like a software developer, mobile application developer, cybersecurity engineer, robotic process automation engineer, and the likes, right, as part of that process, because we wanted to in-house most of our systems, right? So in terms of actions taken, this is what we did. Set our vision, and then we took those important steps from number 2 to number 5 there, right? So one may then also ask to then say, obviously as we are transforming, there are a lot of things that has to be done, a lot of initiatives that have to be implemented. So how did we prioritize? Because obviously prioritization becomes important. You can't do everything at once, right? I think it also speaks to that agile way of doing things. You've got to identify certain initiatives that have high impact, and then you concentrate on delivering those. So this was our prioritization matrix, where we prioritized initiatives where customer experience, financial benefit, and quick time to value intersected, right? So we gave priority to any initiative that would speak to customer experience, at the same time giving, because remember, we're also here to serve shareholders, right? So, the shareholder will be looking for some financial benefit, right? And then, obviously, then looked at how long it would then take to implement certain initiatives. So, early value realization was also a critical aspect of our prioritization matrix. And then in terms of what that then gave us, from 2019, we have managed to develop most of the systems that you run, or that we run in NMB right now, from your internet banking, mobile banking, all our channels, we developed on our own using local talent, using Sadza eaters. I always say that, right? Most of these guys, if not all, were schooled locally here in Zimbabwe. And I will tell how we were then able to do that. But we managed to in-house most of our systems. So we actually replaced vendors, right, from our channels. Because if you look at most of the vendors, for most of them, we were actually on a revenue sharing model. So it was like we were working for these vendors. I remember one of the vendors that was giving us the mobile banking platform. They were charging a fee for every transaction to then say, when your customer logs onto your mobile, there's a certain small fee. When they transact, we also share revenue on that. So it was like we were working for these guys. So we managed to completely eliminate that using our internally developed solutions. So if you have interacted with an NMB bank channel, just know that it was developed internally, locally, with Zimbabwean talent. And these are some of the solutions that we are now then selling through Xplug, and I'll get to that. So these are the results. So we managed to develop our channels. We also introduced, and I think this is very relevant for today's session, robotic process automation, where we started to introduce software robots, right, in some of our processes. So all processes that were repetitive, so robotic process automation is very powerful, and I encourage every one of you to explore it. Obviously, you can't apply it to every other process there. You have to identify candidate process, but anything that is repetitive, anything that has rules, that is finite rules, to then say you start from here, you do this, do that, robots can do. So we introduced robotic process automation in our processes. One of the processes, just to give you some stats, is reconciliations, for example. If you look at the reconciliation process, it is repetitive in nature, right? If you ask the guy doing reconciliation, yes, they want the job, but if they are to be honest with you to then say, are you enjoying your job, right? They are not enjoying that job because it's not value adding. You're just taking data from that system, match, identify exceptions. That process in nature is repetitive. Do you know how many resources that we used to have around reconciliations? 36 resources. 36 resources that we're looking at various bank accounts, because we do have a number of internal accounts and all. So we had 36 resources that we're doing reconciliations. When we introduced robotic process automation, right, we cut down that number from 36 to 2. And these 2, it's not that robotic process automation can do everything end to end. It's just to give stakeholders comfort to then say, there's been some human oversight. So we still need a human being to take accountability, right, for the outcome. But in terms of the heavy lifting and all the processes, it's being done by robots, right? Revenue assurance. Again, if you look at that process, repetitive. Someone is just looking at transactions that were done, were they charged correctly, and all. You can't do that with a human eye, right? We had a lot of people around that, right? And I will tell you then how, as Xplug, we're then helping other organizations to implement robotic process automation, and I'll tie it even to agentic AI. So all these then led to the birth of Xplug. Remember, one of our goals was then to commercialize, to then say, once we are done with NMB transformation, whatever solutions we have developed for NMB, let's commercialize. So that's what gave birth to Xplug, right? Where we are now taking these solutions to the other end. You know, you see, I thought you were going to clap for me. We are not selfish. We like to share. Obviously, in the process of sharing, we also then want to make some few dollars, right? But this is what gave birth to Xplug, where now the vision is then to take these solutions. Because we actually realized that whatever problems we are facing, we're not just in Zim, but almost all African countries are in this situation, right? If you move into most of these banks, huge teams around reconciliations, huge teams around account opening, right? They are doing a lot of repetitive tasks and all. So for us, it was then an opportunity to then take the experiences, what we had done well for NMB, and then we then start to monetize. So this is what then gave birth to Xplug. But before I dive into Xplug, just to show you some impact, it is important that as you transform, you also show and track this impact, right? It is not just a matter of just putting some digital lipstick, introducing 1 or 2 smart AI systems and all. We need to see the impact. Board members want to see the impact. Your staff members want to see the impact. So for us, we're also deliberate in terms of then tracking the impact of our transformation journey, right? So remember, we wanted to grow the business. One of our goals was to grow the business 10 times using the same staff number. We managed to grow it 9x. Yes, we missed the 10x, right? But we managed to achieve 9x, which is not bad, right? If you're a board member, you're going to give me a bonus, right? Okay. Our channels adoption rate increased from 33% to 81%, and I'll tell you why our channels adoption rate was low. Number one, we needed licenses just to onboard customers. So these vendors would charge us licenses per user to onboard customers. So we ended up limiting the number of users that would onboard on certain channels, right? And again, even after paying so much, it was not the easiest of processes to onboard. You needed a PhD just to sign up on a mobile banking app. I mean, you'll be asked, who is your mother? What is your color? You know, so customers didn't like our channels, right? But because we were now developing our own solutions, we had an opportunity to even co-create some of these solutions with our customers, where we would have customer focus groups, right? Asking the customers to then say, what would you want to see on a mobile banking, right? How would you want to transact and all? So that increased our channels adoption rate to 81%. And I think the most important one for me is, those awards. We managed to win the best performing bank in 2022, best digital innovation award 2023. I think there are certain awards that I didn't put there. In 2024, we won the most digitized institution in Zimbabwe award. So it's just a testament. It's still on 40 if you are coming to. Okay. Right? So you see, we're tracking metrics across, even in terms of job enrichment, right? Because we had introduced new roles, right? People who used to do reconciliations were, so we didn't fire these guys, right? They were just reassigned to do more value-adding tasks. Like I said earlier on, yes, people would want to keep their jobs, but if you then really interrogate them to then say, are you enjoying your job? They are not, right? Someone would want to wake up every day to go to a job where they are adding value, where their upper part of the brain is working. So if I'm coming every day doing reconciliations, definitely I'm not satisfied, right? So you see, we're very deliberate. 91% of our accounts now are being opened digitally. You can just download the NMB app. You can have yourself an account within minutes. Because the MC is cheating, he gave me 10 minutes. I'll quickly move into Xplug. Sorry, MC. Okay. I thought you had switched me off. So I think one of the greatest impact of our transformation journey has been the birth of Xplug, where we are not just providing solutions. In fact, if I ask you about Xplug right now, most of you don't know about Xplug. Why? It was deliberate, right? We wanted to start off by penetrating the other African countries. So to date, as Xplug, we're actually running projects in 7 African countries, right? And these are projects that are being executed by SADZA eaters, locally schooled, locally trained, right? In Rwanda, I know Rwanda has a reputation for innovation and tech. So we do have an agent banking solution that we developed here in Zimbabwe that is powering the 3rd largest bank in Rwanda. They are also using our approval workflow system, and we have implemented some robots for them. In Tanzania, we just completed one of our biggest robotic process automation projects where we have helped one of the largest banks there to implement RPA. And I mean, just to show you impact, that bank has about 1,500 ATMs, and they used to have about 87 resources that used to reconcile those ATMs. When we came in, introduced RPA, 1,500 ATMs are being reconciled in 3 hours using one robot. And they've actually reassigned those resources, right? Just to show you that, yes, it's not just about us developing these solutions, deploying them, but they're actually making an impact. In Uganda, we did the same RPA. So we're actually huge when it comes to robotic process automation. If you ever want to know how you can start your journey, you can talk to us. And now the next play is now, as Xplug, we've positioned ourselves as a digital workforce accelerator. So we looked at all this AI hype, right? And then say, right, what is the opportunity for organizations? What is the opportunity for businesses? I mean, one of the glaring opportunities is the introduction of digital workforces to then say, yes, now that AI is creative, AI can now create new content, AI can now reason better and all. It means that this is giving birth to new I like to call them worker types, right? So this is how we view AI, right? Not to say this is everything that AI is going to introduce, but I think AI, one of the most impactful use cases is that it is going to introduce a new worker, right? So in the new workforce, not every worker is going to be wearing an ID badge. You are going to have some digital workforce in form of AI agents and in form of robots, right? So in your new organizations, and I think I'm happy Doku is here, he can then correct me and say, you are doing it wrong and all. But this is what we have been helping organizations to build, this kind of architecture, to then say we help you to build an infrastructure and initiatives where people, human beings, will then be able to interact with AI agents and robots. And if you come to NMB and I invite you, if you want to see some AI agents in use, you can come through. We have actually developed one AI agent that is now handling our account opening process, where it does the heavy lifting in terms of document verifications, ID verifications, and the likes. And I invite you to come through. Good thing is we are here, right here in Zimbabwe. So this is going to be the new workforce configuration, where humans will lead AI agents and robots. So we say robots should do anything that is rule-based, that is repetitive. Leave that to robots. And then anything that requires heavy lifting in terms of reasoning and thinking, because these AI models have been trained on huge sets of data, leave that to AI agents. This is how we are seeing it, and this is how we are approaching it. To then say AI agents should then come in to do tasks that require a lot of reasoning, a lot of thinking, and they do the heavy lifting. And then human beings will just oversee, right? This is where then the human in the loop then comes in to then say, yes, we are not saying the AI agent should then open an account and give a customer an account without anyone overseeing what it did. So we are also taking into consideration that explainability to then say, as an agent does its work, it should then be able to log everything that it is doing. When it makes decisions, it should tell to then say, I made this decision because of I've referred to these sources and all. So we've actually implemented that in Zimbabwe, again using SADSA eaters. I will skip this. This is the case study that I was talking about, where this bank is now. I just want you to pay attention to that metric there, right? And this is information that they gave us on their own to then say, look, we are now saving 700 man hours, right, per day, just because of robotic process automation. So these are real opportunities, and it's good that it's being done here in Zimbabwe. So one may then ask to then say, how are you resourcing all these projects? And like I said, we are doing this using local talent, right? So we do have, in NMB, we do have a training program where we get fresh graduates from universities. So we've actually partnered with universities, and we've told them that we want your best students, right? Your sharpshooters, right? So they help us to identify the sharpshooters, and then we get them onto an internship program. Once they come for an internship program, which is 1 year, we then put them through a certification exercise, where we then force them to certify in certain international. You see how we are then bringing in the international bit, right? So we're not just relying on their knowledge that they've accumulated from the local university. We are then forcing them to go through these certifications, right? For those that will know, they go through Java certification. Now, recently, we have started to force them to go through AI certifications. It's just that there's been a lot of these mushrooming organizations that claim to offer AI. That's what has delayed us to certify. But the long and short of it is we force these students to go through a certification program. And then we have also partnered with local universities. All local universities now have innovation hubs, right? And I tell you, there are very, very good ideas, very bright students, very good projects that are being done under these innovation hubs. So what we've done is we've partnered with these universities, where we'll be running a series of hackathons. Just 2 weeks ago, we ran our first hackathon with Midland State University. And the idea is, once we are done with the hackathon, we take the winners and then we incubate them. We co-incubate them as the industry experts, and the university will bring in the academics bit. And then, so you see, we are bringing in 3 different entities: academia, industry expertise, and the innovator, who is the guy who is doing the project that is being incubated. And we believe that this is how we are going to create the next Silicon Valley of Africa. I think we are not going to do it in isolation, but we have to do it, we have to be deliberate, right? We have to be deliberate as the industry experts to then say, yes, we have been complaining to them, say, universities are producing useless graduates. No. You'll be surprised with the amount of talent that are in local universities, they just need guidance, right? So when we run these hackathons, it's us who actually give them the topics, the projects, because we are identifying the gaps in the industry. And then we co-create, and then the university will bring in their firepower in terms of research and the likes, and we are bringing in our industry expertise. We are providing a market for these innovators to then sell their products. That's why our vision is 54 and more, and we believe that it is possible and we can drive it using local talent. I do have a gift of continuity. This is looking like a pulpit in my other life. So, so let me stop here.
In his other life, he's a prophet. I mean, he's got the body already. So, yeah. All right, guys, quick questions. Q&A, I've got a hand at the back. Again, guys, your name, where you're from, and question. No comments, question.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Akudzwe. I am from the Old Mutual Group. I have a few questions, so maybe I'll pick one or two.
Let's pick one.
All right, so I understand from your presentation that you've reduced the sign-up fatigue for your customers, essentially improving on the user experience.
Yes.
But from a compliance perspective and regularization, how are you managing to then have the full customer set of details required by the Reserve Bank?
Okay, thank you. We're going to do a cycle of 3 questions, and then you'll respond once. I've got a hand here and a hand at the front there. Oh, okay. There we go. Helen.
Afternoon, everyone.
Coming to you.
My name is Helen.
Please stand, Helen. We all want to see you.
Right. My name is Helen. My question is, does Xplug...
Where are you from, Helen?
Oh, I'm from FedEx.
Thank you.
All right. My question is, does Xplug work for... Does it provide solutions for other industries, not just banking?
All right. Thank you, sir. And then Nina, we'll take 4 questions. Right here. Can I have a microphone here, please? Oh, fantastic.
What's my question?
Yeah, sure.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nina from Kai's Future. Thank you for your presentation. I found it extremely impressive. Been working with digital transformation for many years. So I was wondering what, during this process were your main challenges? And I was specifically interested in how you managed to do the cultural change. What did you actually do to get that to happen? Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll take a 4th one.
Okay.
4th one.
Hi, Jimmy Silos from Crystal Candy. I think you're going to get a surge of interest now that you've done this presentation because it's really exciting. What is your capacity like in terms of being able to onboard new clients? And do you have like a minimum project size? Because you've obviously worked with very big institutions. Most of our companies are much smaller. Would you consider working with them? Do you have a minimum project size? Thanks.
Thanks.
All right, there we go. 4 questions, a minute per question. That should give you about 4 minutes response time. Is that okay?
Are you going to bring another?
No, I'll bring another paper just later.
Okay. All right. I'll take the first one on compliance, right? So one thing that I want to highlight is that digital transformation or doing things agilely and all doesn't mean that you have to cut corners. You have to do this in collaboration with the regulators and all. So what we did as part of our transformation implementation is, remember the composability that I was talking about. So we established what we call work streams, right? That we're looking at various elements. I think we had a work stream that was looking at just customer friction points, and then it would prioritize what needs to be solved with another work stream that would look at work-related issues for staff and all. But one of the critical work streams that we had, or that we still have up to now, is called the Combined Assurance work stream, which composes of your compliance department, risk department, and audit. And the chair for that work stream is actually a risk, the head of risk. So what happens is for every innovation, for everything that we develop internally, before we launch it, it has to go through what we call assurance testing. And the assurance testing is just making sure that the solution is compliant with all the regulatory cybersecurity, and also they look at all compliance-related issues. And once they are done, because we are also a regulated entity, for all the innovations that we produce, we have to notify the regulators. So one of the conditions for them to allow you to then go ahead and do live deployments is that they also do certain checks to then say, yes, you have introduced this solution. How are you handling KYC issues? How are you storing it? Where is access to it and all? So I must say that there is some strong collaboration around that. We are not doing it in isolation, but we are collaborating with internal assurance functions and then the regulators. That's number one. I don't know if you want me to. Are you happy? Good. And then, does XPlug provide solutions to other industries? As long as it is RPA related, robotic process automation, custom software development, if you need help to redesign your cybersecurity, if you need help to run vulnerability test, anything to do cybersecurity, we can help you. Just to give you context as well, I mean, yes, most of our clients have been banks, but one of our very, very first clients in Zimbabwe was a medical insurance, one of the medical aid providers here, where we developed a core system for them from scratch. So they actually dumped a system that they were buying, that they were getting from some other guys in South Africa, and now they are running a solution that we developed for them. So they gave us requirements. I think that this is where we then pride ourselves in custom, to then say, we want to work with your requirements. Tell us what you want, and we have the capability to design and develop anything. We say, if you can say it, we can develop it, right? So if you need anything around custom software development, around robotic process automation, and even agentic AI development, we are also happy to work with you. And then main challenges, right? Because the MC took my time, I had this slide. Right? Just on some of the lessons learned, right? Obviously, one of the main challenges is, as you are talking about digital transformation, like right now, if I'm to ask everyone in here to then say, what is your greatest fear when you hear AI? The word AI, right? I'm going to lose my job, right? That's the same thing with digital transformation. As you start this program, every staff member is, you know, human beings are very defensive. Yeah. So I think you've got to, if you fail to articulate, right, the value proposition for, especially for the staff members, you are going to face that resistance. I think it's one of the challenges that we faced in our initial stages, where we were then saying, no, we need to introduce robots, and someone is hearing robots, he's seeing Robocop coming to take away their job and the likes, until we then had to run some programs where we bring in awareness to then say, how is it good for you, right? What's the value proposition for the staff member? Look, you are working overtime, you don't have time with your family, right? If we introduce this robot, we are not saying that we are taking away your job. We're just saying this thing is coming to collaborate with you, do the heavy lifting, and then you can have time to go for vacation and all. So I would say resistance to change, because naturally people are afraid of change, right? So then say what will happen afterwards. You also have, remember, it was a model that was working for the longest time. So you also have some pockets of power. So you also have people who are trying to defend their territories, and you are coming with composability to then say, no one owns the resources here. And then you have an executive who is saying, these are my people, right? Just that from, I mean, I would say someone then, the fear to lose power, right? So they say, what is these work streams? They are going to take away my power. right? We used to hear statements like, they are taking away my people, we are not meeting targets because these people are spending time in the so-called work streams and the likes. So I think you also need to deal with, certain pockets of power and make sure if you fail to do so, I think they will simply sabotage these. And I think for us, why the transformation was very successful is that our CEO, right, was the champion. He was in the forefront, right? He would come to interact even with the teams that are developing the solutions. Sometimes he would sit, right, test the solutions with the teams. At the same time, he would make sure that he communicates the vision to the staff. He was always constantly communicating the value proposition for staff. So our CEO does what he calls CEO roadshows, right, every quarter, where he interacts with each and every staff member. And then in that interaction, he then gets to address their fears, right? And then I think when you also then start to get the results, I mean, if you start to be profitable, it's also good to then pay out people, these bonuses so that they also see these benefits. And I think it's part of that value proposition for staff, right? And then capacity. So the reason why we are now partnering with these universities, right, and innovation hubs is we then want to make sure that we have a very strong pipeline, right, and a scalable resourcing architecture where we should then be able to resource any project at any particular point in time. But we also acknowledge that we then have to participate in building that pipeline and making sure that those guys that are in the universities and in those innovation hubs are equipped with the appropriate skills, right? So I would say, yes, we do have that capacity. We are still creating it, but we are able to handle projects. In fact, now, as Explug, we are coming back to Zimbabwe now because we have managed to penetrate 7 other African countries. We have built a very strong reference sites, and I believe as Zimbabweans, now you can also listen to us. You know the problem with Zimbabweans, right? If I were to come to you 2 years ago, you're just going to view me as a startup and you're going to brush me aside and all. But now that we have delivered projects in other serious markets, I mean, if you look at some of these clients, it's not like they're out of options, right? These are guys that have access, that have money, right? They don't have foreign currency constraints like us and all. They are moneyed. They can get vendors from anywhere. The fact that they chose Xplug and we managed to deliver, I think, also sends a strong message to Zimbabwe. So we have the capacity, we are prepared to serve Zimbabwe. I did 50 seconds. Yes. I dealt with compliance. I dealt with Xplug providing solutions to other industries. I dealt with main challenges. I dealt with capacity.
All right, fantastic. I understand there's we'll do a last round of questions and then we'll close this session. There we go, yes. At the back, we'll do one round.
Thank you. Mine is more of a contribution. My name is Sicelo Dube. I'm passionately known as the STEM lady, and I'm the founder of Elevate Trust. It's a STEM empowerment organization for students. And so not everyone will have an opportunity like NMB to go and have an MOU with a university, but I would like to let you know that at Elevate Trust, we work with all the universities and high schools, and we have what are called innovator subclubs. And these are the clubs for the innovators we are all looking for. And we can facilitate hackathons for you, brainstorming sessions for you, focus group discussions for you, as we work together to form the Silicon Valley for Zimbabwe. Thank you.
So me and you need to talk after this.
Well, there you go. If nobody gives you the podium, you just take it to the back of the room and create your own podium and just sell yourself. You know, that's what life is about, guys. Nobody's going to give you. If Sekai didn't invite you to be a speaker, make yourself a speaker whilst you're at your table. Simple. All right? Christine, you had your hand up, and then we'll close with you. Okay. Okay. So, Christine and my dear big brother here, and then we close this session. Thank you.
So my question is on data safety. Who's responsible if the AI misuses data or causes financial loss considering that we don't have any laws or regulations that govern AI, does the bank have its own accountability framework in place?
Yeah. All right, thank you. Sir, can I have the microphone here, please?
Thank you very much for the presentation. My question is more on the registration and licensing. Because some of the challenges that you have with these innovation hubs is that they come up with solutions, but when it comes to licensing and registration, it's a difficult thing. How did you manage that? And yeah, what is the status today? Thank you.
Okay, the MC is not there, so there's an opportunity for me to come in. Victoria Jakazi, I've introduced myself. I just want to know, there's been an issue that we have been discussing with some universities, especially in Manicaland, on their collaboration with industry. My question is, have you been able, or how far have you been able to influence?
Wait. Who added you? I had 2 people. I get out of the room, I come back, there's a 3rd person. I'm like, seriously, guys.
Okay.
Anyway, she's an elder. Okay, go on, mommy.
How far have you been able to influence curricula at universities, or do you take part so that the graduates are relevant, rather than you just taking what the university has produced and then you start from scratch to where you want to take them? Thank you, MC.
Thank you. So I'll take the data safety one. So now in Zimbabwe, we now have a data protection and privacy policy. I think that was released by Potras, and all organizations actually mandated to comply with it. And part of that compliance process is that you must have some data protection officers. So if anything is to happen around data, if data is misused and all, those data protection officers have to be arrested, because these are the people that are charged with the money to make sure that the organization is complying with that policy. I think the policy really outlines how we should handle data. It classifies this data and all. It's very clear, and we appreciate the regulators for doing that. So there's guidance in terms of how we should handle data. And I'm sure if in your organization, if you don't have a data protection officer, I think you run the risk of the CEO then being jailed. Right? They are that serious and all. So that's it around data safety. And then in terms of registration and licensing of these innovations and all. So good thing is, I've taken time to move around the innovation hubs. I think I've met almost all the innovation hubs in Zim. And I like the fact that one of the things that they do once they identify a project to incubate is that they then force the innovators to register a company. And then they actually assist them as the university. So the university will actually be at the forefront of then assisting the innovators with all the company registration. So if you go to most of these innovation hubs, all the projects that you see there, you actually see that these are registered startups, right? Registered with the registrar of companies. I think what we've then been pushing them to do is then to make sure that they also have all the papers required to run a business. I mean, your tax clearances and all. But at least the first step of registration and licensing, I'm happy that the universities are handling that. And I've actually seen good progress. If you go to MSU right now, all the projects there, they are registered startups. And then how far have you been able to influence curriculum? I think we have also initiated the discussion. Myself, I've been invited by NAST, MSU to also contribute in reviewing their curriculum, especially in light of these AI disruptions and all. Clearly, our curriculum needs to change. It can't remain the way it is. So as industry, again, we are also being deliberate. I know in some cases I actually had to probe certain departmental chairmen to then say, what is it that we are doing with this AI? Don't pretend as if you are not seeing that there's a new wave coming. What have you done to restructure your programs and all? So we then want to replicate that across all the universities, where we then put in our 2 cents in there and make sure that the curricula is relevant to the operating environment. I was about to answer. I was about to ask myself and then answer myself.
He was about to ask himself. Well done. Let's give a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Big round of applause. Thank you so much for that presentation.